So everybody, we had a huge announcement this week, and if you've seen any of my other videos, or if you haven't, actually go back and watch them. At first, I caught a very short clip of the announcement. I made a huge assumption that was all the announcement was. A friend brought it out to me that made me realize there was way more to it. I watched the entire 1 hour announcement, and I am so ecstatic. And one of the reasons why I'm so happy is because it sheds the light on something that I have been really trying to focus on lately, and the fact that your brain health or your general health, all chronic conditions, are related to cellular and mitochondrial dysfunction, right? In the cell, we have the membrane and we have mitochondria, but we also have this thing called methylation, and it is huge because methylation, if it doesn't work right, it impacts the mitochondria. If the mitochondria is not working right, then it just basically shuts down different systems or your entire body, and then you might notice chronic fatigue or any kind of cognitive symptom. So if you are struggling with brain fog, fatigue, or memory lapses, or ADHD, or anything, it might not be stress. Some people might think that it's just stress related. Just to let you know, stress plays a ginormous role in your health. But if you're just chalking it up to stress, saying I'm just having a stressful day, you are probably missing out on what's really going on. So it could be something much deeper. There is a tiny biochemical process that happens in all of our cells, and it's called methylation, that controls hundreds of functions in your body. So when methylation slows down, your mitochondria, like I told you, your mitochondria, those are little energy powerhouses in your cells. And there are, by the way, mitochondria in each cell. Some brain cells need so many mitochondria that I think it's up to 3 million mitochondria per cell. But your heart needs a lot of mitochondria. Anything that needs a lot of energy, brain, heart, needs a lot of mitochondria. So if the methylation slows down, your mitochondria isn't going to produce enough energy, and then all of those symptoms, they are going to struggle and slow down too. So today what I want to do is I want to break down what methylation really is, why it matters in your brain, and how you can start supporting it right now. Before we dive in though, I want to let you know that this is the first video in a whole series that I'm going to be doing specifically focusing on methylation and brain health and how methylation is tied to the mitochondria and the different systems. Because this announcement this week was so very critical. I really want to make you understand why, because the average person listening, first of all, the average person just paying attention in the world is just going to think that the whole announcement was about the connection between Tylenol and autism. Is that an important connection? Yes, it's a huge important connection. They didn't really talk about why, but the more important discussion was about this role of folic acid, folate in the brain, and we're going to get to that later, but it is really hugely important, and this can impact many children on the spectrum. And it can even impact people if you're not on the spectrum, but maybe you are entering that cognitive decline, which I'm also talking a lot about. So in the upcoming videos, we will talk about things like how folate, folic acid, and MTHFR genes all tie into methylation, how toxins like acetaminophen, pesticides, and heavy metals block these pathways, and then I'll get specific what methylation looks like in autism, in ADHD, focus, dementia, cognitive decline, different kind of issues. And so for this reason, I really want to make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the rest of the series whenever I post them. And I really try to post videos once a week. Every once in a while, I have to miss a week, but I will be posting these usually on Sundays. So try to make sure you're paying attention to that. So this video is more on what is methylation. So we're going to just start simple. Methylation is a very complex thing, and I can't even 100% wrap my head around it because there's so many things, but we're going to keep it simple, but it is so important in your cells. And basically it's the process of adding tiny little carbon and hydrogen molecules, it's called a methyl group, onto molecules inside of your body. And that tag, so if you want to think about it, is like a tag. That tag will act like a switch, and it can turn things on and turn things off, like genes, right? You want your good genes to be turned on, and you want the bad genes to be turned off. So this is very important. It can also help your body move different processes forward. So if you think about it like a factory worker stamping approval on a product as it moves down the line, if it doesn't have a stamp, it doesn't move forward. With the stamp, everything flows smoothly. And then if you can think about that whole Lucille Ball episode where she's like on the chocolate factory and then she just can't keep up and just trying to hoard all the chocolate. That's what you can think about when things are not moving smoothly. Things just get backed up and then you have a huge mess on your hands. In your body, methylation steps would be needed for things like detoxifying chemicals and heavy metals. So methylation is so critical for detoxification. Kids on the spectrum are poor detoxifiers. That's like a known thing. They're poor detoxifiers. If they're not methylating, you're not detoxifying. If you're not detoxifying, those heavy metals and chemicals get stored in the body. If you are in the womb, your brain is still developing. If you are just born, your brain is still developing. And if you are a 20-year-old boy, your brain is still developing. We all know that boys have a really hard time connecting that frontal lobe. But depending on which stage in the process you are, will determine what part of the brain is affected by that. Another thing that it does is it repairs DNA and it keeps your genetic code stable. So methylation is responsible for turning on and off gene detoxification, genes. It also produces neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine that control mood and focus. Think of anxiety, right? ADHD, all those kind of things. And they even produce energy at the cellular level because there is an interplay between methylation and mitochondria. So methylation, it seems like really tiny because it happens in the cell, but it's huge. And it's because it doesn't just happen in one cell, it happens all over the body. So why does methylation matter for the brain? So we're going to connect this directly to the brain. Your brain depends on methylation for processing neurotransmitters, which allows you to think clearly and to feel balanced, detoxifying environmental toxins that would otherwise inflame your neurons, repairing neurons, and protecting your DNA from damage. So when the methylation slows down, you have neurotransmitters that dip. That leads to anxiety, depression, ADHD-like symptoms, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, let's say acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that's responsible for learning. So you have a lot of things that can happen. Homocysteine, it's a byproduct on the methylation cycle. I'll show it a picture of it, not today, but there's all these like little parts of the cycle. Homocysteine is part of it. It's a natural byproduct, but it is inflammatory. So if it builds up, because it should be recycled back into methionine. So when homocysteine builds up, that's linked to dementia and to stroke. There are tests where you can test to see your levels of homocysteine. And if you're a child, you're not going to be a child watching this, but if you were a child and you had methylation issues, you would have high homocysteine levels. So you can test it. You don't have to be older. But if you were developing normally and as you're aging and you're developing high homocysteine levels, then that's can lead to things like dementia and stroke and other things. Because I think homocysteine is a byproduct of breaking down proteins, and so that's whole system's not working right. And then as toxins build up, that is going to add more stress on your brain, and it makes your mitochondria very sluggish. Yeah, we need that mitochondria to be able to think and to have, like sometimes like you're really sharp and then you like peter out. Okay, so you're burning through your glucose and your mitochondria really quickly. So poor methylation can equal poor brain performance. So let's talk a little more about the methylation and the mitochondria interaction. Your mitochondria, again, they're little powerhouses in your cells, and they can't do their job without methylation. So methylation helps recycle. So we talked about homocysteine. It recycles it back to methionine, which is used to make something called SAMe. And it's not SAMe like your Sammy. It's a SAM with a little e. Okay, capital S, capital A, capital M with a tiny little e. And basically that acts like fuel for many of the mitochondrial enzymes. When the methylation is working well, the mitochondria can crank out ATP, your energy currency, and your brain cells thrive. But when methylation is blocked, your mitochondria slows down, less energy gets produced, and you feel it as fatigue, poor focus, mood swings, or brain fog. Poor methylation, poor mitochondrial energy, poor brain function. So are we starting to see the picture? It's all connected. That is why our Western medicine loves to focus on one tiny little part of your body, but it's all connected. You're methylating everywhere, right? Not just like, I don't know, it's just these doctors, we do need a specialist, like we do need someone who knows the throat a little bit more than like your toe doctor, but in general, everything is connected. All right, so what can we do to support methylation? Here are a few but powerful steps. So first, we want to eat folate-rich foods like leafy greens, beans, avocados, and asparagus. You want to make sure you're getting enough B vitamins, especially B12, B6, and riboflavin, because they recycle the homocysteine. And minerals like zinc, magnesium are cofactors that your enzymes need to keep the methylation moving. And then you always need to be working on reducing stress, because high cortisol literally depletes your methylation capacity. It also ruins your microbiome. Like stress just does you no favors. So high cortisol, basically if you stack a bunch of dominoes, the cortisol usually tends to be one of the first dominoes that falls over and makes everything else and causes chaos. So we call that metabolic chaos. It's not just about finding one magic pill or taking a random supplement. Methylation is just one bigger piece of that cellular puzzle, but it works hand in hand with your mitochondria, your detox pathways, and your nervous system. And that's why addressing it as part of a larger plan is really important. Just to wrap this up for today's video, methylation, it's the switch that powers your detox, your neurotransmitters, and your mitochondria. But when it's off, your brain feels it. But when you support your mitochondria, your methylation, you can unlock your focus, energy, and long-term brain protection. In these next videos, we're going to be talking more and more detail about the methylation and tie it back to, so why did the White House just push through really fast the leucovorin, which is the prescription strength of folinic acid? So we're going to get to that. But this is a whole huge, it's really big, and I'm so proud that it is coming to the surface. It's going to start being mainstream, because I remember 24 years ago when my son was diagnosed. He was diagnosed probably 22 years ago, but we knew in the natural health world, it was the first time we heard about gluten. We had to shop. It was really hard to shop and find gluten-free foods, but they were there. But people just didn't know what gluten was. They didn't talk about it, or the microbiome. They didn't know that was a big thing. Now, today, those things are widely known, okay, maybe for different reasons, but now people are talking about the microbiome. Now people are talking about gluten. And so now, hopefully, we're going to start having big discussions on methylation and toxins and why they are so important. So if you're ready to find out whether your methylation problems might be behind your brain fog, fatigue, or memory issues, then, I would really love to help you. Just book a call. I have a link below in the description, and we can just look at your history and your labs and create a step-by-step plan to restore your brain and energy. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And don't forget to subscribe, because I don't want you to miss out on the next videos in this series where we're going to break down folate, folinic acid, and the MTHFR gene and into simple terms so that you can understand and know what to do for yourself or your family and your kids. All right, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.